Greetings, folks. This is a tutorial on how to compile a video with a rotation of your model and texture and export to video format for the spring show. So when you open up the zip file template, or the zip file with the templates in them, first you have to think about the two pieces of software we're going to be using. We're going to be using Marmoset and After Effects and Adobe Media Encoder. Now, all these pieces of software are available in the lab on school campus, so that will probably be your best bet on doing this and putting this all together. So first, let's look at the After Effects template folder. If you open that up, there will be the project file, which is called 2018 Spring Show Submission Project File. You got AAU logo, don't touch that. The SODV logo, that stands for School of Game Development, don't touch that. So the files you will be touching in just a little bit will be two videos and two texture samples. Now if we go to After Effects, this is essentially what the video is going to look like. You're going to have your model in the middle, two texture samples on the side, and you want to input your information here. First, let's take a quick look. Basically what it is a full rotation with the wireframe and untextured, and then about halfway through it will fade to a textured sample. And each video will be about 20 seconds. So it's enough time to see the polygons and the geo, and then see a full rotation with the detail and the texture. Now, I've set this up in such a way that it's easy to click, create, and dump and export. So if you need to review this video again, please do so, or check the notes. So notice the layout, right? Now the teapot is just a current sample right now. The layout is a specific size. And when you import your file into the Marmoset file, you have to make sure that it fits roughly this area. So the camera is going to be locked in Marmoset. I'll show that in just a minute. In the After Effects file, you'll notice that all these different things here are locked down. Don't touch them. We're not going to edit them. The logo, the two textures, texture sample 1 and 2, all we're doing is just saving over the original files. We're also going to be saving over the videos as well. The things you will edit will be the text information here. We'll get to that in just a little bit. First, let's go to Marmoset. So I'm going to go back to my main folder. So let's go back to the Spring Show Marmoset template. I'm going to rename that in just a second. Let's go to the Marmoset template. Let's click on this folder here. We got 4 files. We got 2 template files for Marmoset, a TGA, and OBJ. These are just to keep in the Marmoset file. First thing we want to do is do the wireframe template. So let's double click and let's open that up. Now this is already set for us. We can look at the time frame. It has a nice little spin. We have a little negative space to compensate for the textures in the After Effects file. Now please keep in mind, and this is very important to consider and think about, your object might be much bigger than the teapot or much smaller. So what you need to do is consider resizing your object in your 3D package of choice, whether it be Max, Maya, or Blender. And you need a little bit of space underneath. You probably want to make sure that the object doesn't go beyond this bottom quarter here, because as we look in After Effects, we have a rotation, and if your object will clip into this particular area here, your text field, and you want to be able to see all your work. So please be cognizant of your object sizing. All right, so here we are. Everything here is locked. The key light here, the fill light, and the backlight. Don't touch that. Same thing with our render, right? Here, the sky. Don't touch the sky brightness. Don't touch the main camera. Keep that fixed. That's really important because we want both videos to match up. Render, don't touch that either. All the settings should be set to high res, high DPI. the objects that are unlocked is the turntable. Now the turntable has a spin rate of 36 over 20 seconds. Don't touch that. That's really important. Here's my object, and let's pull this in. So I'm going to go to where I have some objects. I have my John Doe prop any shapes. So this kind of demonstrates taking either your character or your diorama or your prop and bring this in. I also have two textures that might be associated with that. But right now we're not going to work with textures. We're just doing the basic flat model with no texture and just the wireframe. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to take my OBJ or FBX and pull this in. Now make sure that your object is exported in your 000 coordinates. Okay. Now this object, this crazy group of objects, is not a child of the turntable. So all I need to do is click and drag this so that's a child of the turntable. Now the teapot I don't need anymore. I can either delete it or just turn it off. And there we go. So because this is a child property of the turntable, it will follow the rotation. Great. Let's export this. To export this, I'm going to go to Capture. I'm going to go to Video. And here are the settings. Make sure your width is set to 920 and the height is 1080. Make sure your sampling is at 16 and your video format is H.264. And of course, bring your quality all the way up to 100. And you hit export. Now, I can probably put this in the Marmoset template folder, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this, I'm going to save this into the After Effects template. So this is where, let me do a quick show here. So here is the After Effects template. Notice we have two videos. We have the rendered wireframe without texture and the render with texture. And that is located here. Here is without, here is with texture. So all we're doing is just replacing the files so you don't have to re-import anything. That makes things a lot easier. So we're doing the one with the wireframe, and all I'm going to do is click on here and save over that file. Now, hopefully you're working with a copy, so in case you mess up, you can always revert back to your copy. Hit save, and it'll say you want to replace it, just hit yes, and then we wait for it to render. I'm going to pause the video now. Alright, so I finished rendering, and of course you want to check your work. So I've opened up the file and hit play. And there we go, it works alright. Now I've noticed that my objects are coming close to the bottom, so chances are these objects are going to clip through the titles on the video. So I might have to rearrange that, but for the time being I'm not. So that should do a full 20-second rotation, and then we can move on to the next piece. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my Marmoset template folder. I'm going to take this one and let's close that. Let's open up the one called Textured. This is important because here is an example of the teapot with a sample texture. Same rotation, just with a texture. Now, again, these objects or these parts of your outliner are sanctioned off. Don't touch them. But let's bring that object back in that we had before. Pardon me, wrong one. So here is our John Doe prop. Let's bring that in and perform the same operation. We can take the whole group of objects and pull them up and put them into the turntable and turn off the teapot. But now we want the texture. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring my texture in here. Now, some of you might need more than one material. That's fine. This is just for the final rotation with the textures. So use as many materials as you need to complete your render. Now, under texture sample, I only have albedo, but of course you might have normal map, gloss map, specular, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to replace it with one of my textures. Let's use the base rock, and let's click and drag that in. And let's apply that to my object. And there we go. Here it is with the texture. So we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to go to Capture. We're going to go to Video. Remember that our video export is set to 1920 by 1080 at 16, and video format is H.264 with a quality of 100. We're going to export this. However, we're going to save over a different file. So we're going to save to our After Effects template, and rather than saving over our rendered wireframe, we're going to do rendered with texture and hit save. And we want to replace it, yes. And I'll pause the video. All right, we finished our render, so let's check. Let's go back to our After Effects template, and rendered with texture should work just fine. So we'll load that up and hit play. And that looks pretty good. Well, it's not the best model, it's just to show an example. So because we saved over files that already existed, when we go into After Effects, what's going to happen is that the entire project will be updated. So let's check it out. And sure enough, there it is. So what used to be a teapot is now our object. If we hit play, we'll see the rotation. Now do notice that my object is clipping through. So check your scene. And of course we see the fade. Fade from wireframe to textured, and then from textured to wireframe. All right, now we got to add our textures here. We have got two files, texture sample 1 and 2. Right now they're the same, but we're going to change that. So I'm going to go back to my folder where I have this stuff. I'm going to copy the base rock that I have. I also have a grass and flower texture that I like to play around with, and we're going to use that as an example as well. So I'll just quickly show you in Photoshop that this thing will load. And always check your work. Yep, okay, so that's one texture. And let's just check the other one just to make sure. There we go. Excellent. And there we are. So we got our two textures, grass and rock. So let's bring them here. So I'm going to copy them. Let's go into our After Effects template. Let's paste it. So don't touch the logo. Don't touch this logo because we need them for in the corner down here, but we will change this up. So all we have to do is rename our textures. So we got texture sample 1 and texture sample 2. So I'm going to rename this one, copy it, and delete it. And let's make the base rock. Let's rename this one and paste that name. And let's do the same thing here. I could have renamed them in another folder and bring them in. That works just as well. I just wanted to show where everything is. So texture sample 2, let's copy this and delete it. And this will be the grass and flower. Let's rename this one just texture sample 2. Let's go into After Effects, and that should load up. And there we go. So now what we have to do, we have to change our text. So first name, last name. So I'm going to double click on the text. I'm typing my name. Now this text over here, that's the program I'm in. Maybe you're an MFA, maybe you're an associate's degree. So you would type in BFA, MFA, AA, or MA for Master of Arts. Now we don't want this text to be all the way out here. Let's bring it in a little bit and give it enough space between your name, just so that it feels a little bit unified. And the title of your artwork, that's important too. So we'll call this Jamin's, let's say, video demo. Now, don't make your title video demo. When you submit your work, you're supposed to give your work a title. So use the same title, because this will be shown on the video wall during the spring show. So there we go. That is what we got so far. Now let's export. And don't forget to save your work as you go. That's important. So to export, there are some specific instructions. I've included a link to a web page called Video School Online and how to export an MP4 file from After Effects. We want to use MP4 because it has a very good compression and it looks pretty good, and it's low in memory usage. So in order to do that, we have to use Adobe Media Encoder, And that's included with Creative Cloud license, which we have in our school computers. And you also have it as well if you have a home computer. So in order to do so, in order to export, here's what we do. We go up to Composition, and then we go to Add to Media Encoder Queue, or Control-Alt-M. Again, under Composition, and then Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. This will load up another application called Adobe Media Encoder. And as that loads up, everything will think, and it's going to ask you, well, what's your bit rate? We have, let's, all right, so we have rendered wireframe without texture. And you might get a different name than I do, but let's take a look at our output. So on the first, you might want to make sure that you're set to H.264, H.264. Set your match source to highest bit rate, and then we're going to figure out our export. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that we place our export file in which we can easily access it. After Effects might create another folder, but what I'm going to do, I'm just going to bring it out here to the root folder. Right now it's set to be named Rendered Wireframe Without Texture, but we're going to change that. We're going to call this Jamin Chule. Let's just say prop and then demo. It's a good idea to name your file according to the instructions on the submission rules. So check that to make sure. We're going to save it as an MP4, then we're ready to render. And all we have to do is click Start Queue, and off we go. And it will compile all the information necessary to get a full-on video. As this compiles, it'll be pretty quick. But if you have a slower machine, then it might take a little bit longer. Let me pause the video for a second. Alright, this finished rendering, and now here it is here in my root directory for the Spring Show. Let's double click it and check it out. And so far so good. Let's keep it on loop, and it should, and there we go. So that's pretty much how you do it. You get the idea, and good luck, and looking forward to seeing all of your good work.